All right, and here to tell us all about it is Chad Kymal of Omnex. Chad, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you, Mike. Happy to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us, Chad. Let's start off in a nutshell. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what ISO 45001 exactly is.
Well, I tell you, the key that everybody is talking about is that first global agreement on health and safety, and the first ISO standard around it. And I mean, that is the big news. Then, of course, also that it follows the high-level structure of ISO 9001 and ISO 14001.
And this is, I mean, the 45001, though, this is an occupational health and safety standard. So how is it different from was it BSI 18001 or whatever that one is?
That's
and
right.
I think there's an ANSI Z10. There's a couple other standards out there. How does this differ?
Let me just sort of walk you through all these different standards. So the OSHA's 18001, many people don't know, are ISO standard. And by the way, if you go back to the history of ISO standards, they tried to create a ISO health and safety standard and they failed twice. They were voted down twice. So this almost went down the same way, but I'll talk to you about that maybe a little later. So 18001, OSHA's 18001 and ISO 45001 are different because this standard has, number one, the high-level structure. So as you know, the 9001 and 14001 all have the high-level structure. And if I go down that path, I'll take the rest of the interview. So I'll just say that. Second is it focuses on eliminating hazards and tied to what is called the hierarchy of controls. And whereas the 18001 focused more on risk. Third is, because of the international forces, there's more expanded what they call consultation and participation. When they say that, it's always about labor. And what we can also say, there's a key word in here I thought is very interesting. When you do the hazard analysis, they want you to look at social factors, things like that they added workload, they added harassment, they added bullying, they added victimization. So I was very interested in seeing an international standard using that language, but I think very appropriate. I expanded supplier management role and looking at hazards for contractors and outsource. As you know, the worst jobs in a factory are given to contractors and outsourced workers. So this standard, it was there in 18001, but this really expands it. So in a nutshell, those are the key differences, Dirk.
Okay, and you in your article, you write that this was not an easy standard to get passed. I believe you said you guys worked on it for like 5 years or something like that. Why was this so difficult?
Well, number one, I didn't tell you much about ANSI Z10. So ANSI Z10, the United Nations, the UN, has ILO, International Labor Organization, feels that they have a big role to play, and they wrote a OSH standard called the ILO OSH, which decreed to all the different countries to follow the ILO OSH, and the ANSI Z10 sort of follows that format. So here are these different power centers, plus labor or organized labor, we call unions, are also heavily participating in writing the standard. So this is one standard where there's a number of different forces at work, and it almost failed again. So the CD1 had so many different comments, and by the way, some countries refused to vote even because they said, we disagree that there should be an ISO global standard. Companies like Germany, and a couple other European companies. So they're not sort of, some country that, doesn't understand ISO standards. So CD1 went into CD2, which has changed draft 2. Many, many comments. We spent a lot of time getting that into a DIS. And then they spent extra time getting all the countries together. And believe it or not, after that, it sailed through. There was wide agreement, and everybody said we cannot let 5 years worth of work go to waste. And in the U.S., the ANSI Z10 folks are the folks writing the ISO 45001. So that's what's going on.
So here in the U.S., I mean, we talked about occupational health and safety. Probably what leaps to everybody's mind is OSHA. Well, OSHA does that, right? And there's OSHA rules and regulations and laws, right? So
right.
I'm a little unclear on how ISO 45001 or even the earlier 18001, how those coordinated with OSHA anyway, or did they? Are they just two completely separate things, and one just helps you get to another? I mean, what's the relationship?
Yeah, I just mention, as you probably know, I'm on the PC 283, which is the writing committee for the 45001. And in my past, I've also been, I ran a registrar for 10, 12 years. And the first standard that we had to really tussle with this idea of regulations versus management systems was ISO 14001. And the US went into great lengths to say, hey, compliance is compliance. Here's a management system standard, it's a conformance standard, policy and objectives, management review, corrective action, and so on. So that's what you're seeing with 45001. It's a great tool for compliance. Well, compliance touches 45001 in two different ways. One is you need to know all the requirements. And second is you have to do compliance audits. So that's the only way, really. And when I was part of the registrar, I gave great guidance to auditors not to become, not even have the customer perceive us as being as part of regulatory in any way, because we want to make sure, especially in the US, companies understand OSHA is something very different. A management system is very different, where you're looking to see that you have a system in place and it's working towards continual improvement. And by the way, if I didn't mention it, let me mention it now. It says eliminate hazards. That's the goal of the standard.
And Chad, do you think that the framework, however, of ISO 45001, compliance to ISO 45001, does that understanding make OSHA compliance easier for companies that are involved with that?
I definitely believe so. And this is also what the OSHA folks feel, that 45001 is a great benefit to them. And it should be a comfort to top management to know there's a system looking at, with the policy from top management, driving it and throughout the company. And that's also something for 14001 and 45001. We need to make sure it is a company effort versus a single one or two people effort. Yes, absolutely, Mike.
Okay, well, Chad, thanks for joining us this morning. We are going to be, we're going to give people information on a webinar that you're going to be talking about the new 45001 standard. Maybe just tease for us really quick a couple of the highlights that you're going to touch on that webinar.
I'm going to talk about the history. I'm going to talk about the key issues that we were faced with as the PC 283, and then I'll talk about the standard itself, and then we'll talk about deadlines and implementation.
Perfect.
That's the plan.
All right. Well, Chad Kymal, CTO of Omnex, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Dirk. Thank you, Mike. Always a pleasure being with you guys.
All right. Terrific.
Thank you, Chad. We'll see you on Tuesday.
So long.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.